Hello, 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 everybody. How are you doing? Happy weekend, happy Saturday, happy everything. So, how was your weekend? Today, we're going to be talking about the topic Be the Change, and I'm waiting on my guest to join in. So, while we're waiting, let's just have a little chat. How was your week? How did it go? For me, it hasn't been so fantastic, but let me know. How was yours? How are you doing, guys? Hi. Hello.
Hi,
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. So yeah, we're live now, and I was just asking people how their week went. So, how was yours?
My week was great, very busy, very,
Yeah.
very busy. Yesterday was our last day in the legislature for the week,
Oh,
and back and forth between doing that job and volunteering at a vaccine clinic
oh
in my
wow.
constituency. So, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been able to get my vaccine because I'm not in the hot spot. So, hoping for that.
Yeah.
All right. It's nice to really have you, and it's nice to meet you because I'm meeting you for the first time. So
Yes.
that's really good. I've been stalking you on social media, and you are fantastic. So yeah, I really appreciate you, coming on live today, and I believe we're going to learn a whole lot from you. So I'm sure you could see from my name that I'm from Nigeria, and I believe you have Nigerian roots as well.
Of
So at
course.
least we have that in common. All
Mhm.
right. So, hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining the live stream. Is that proud Black woman? And thank you for tuning in today. You already know every time I bring you awesome, awesome guests. And today we have Uzoma Asagwara. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. So, please, as you're coming in, give us a thumbs up. And also, where are you coming from? Rep your city, rep your town, rep your country. Are you from Nigeria? Are you from Ghana? Are you from Canada? Just leave it in the comment section. I'm from Toronto, and I believe our guest is from Manitoba. All right. So the first thing I do is to, read your bio, and I'm just going to go with that. After that, we'll go straight to the question. All right. All right, so Uzama Asagwara is a registered psychiatric nurse, addiction specialist, and former member of the Canadian national basketball team, and in 2019 made history as the first Black queer gender non-conforming person elected to the Manitoba Legislative Assembly and across Canada. Most recently, Uzama became the first Black person to make a law in Manitoba, where the Somali Heritage Week Act was passed in December of 2020 with a unanimous support in the Manitoba legislature. Uzama has been a long-time advocate alongside newcomer and refugee communities, Two-Spirit and LGBTQ plus folks, youths and grassroots organizations. Join me as I welcome Uzama Asagwara. So my first question usually is something on a light mood because I like to ask people, apart from what is on your bio, what is it like fun facts about you, things that you do for fun that people you just want to share with us today?
I mean, during this pandemic, it's been not the easiest actually to do the things that I like to do for fun.
Mm,
Um, I'm a pretty boring person actually. I'm very unexciting. So I think people expect like an exciting answer, but usually, to be honest with you, what I have a lot of fun doing is working out. I like to exercise. I like to like move my body, feel strong in my body. So one thing I did do during this pandemic over the winter months, which I tried it a couple of years ago, a few years ago, but
mm.
this winter I started cross country skiing again,
Oh
and I
wow.
was going pretty much every single day. I would make sure I got out for a ski. I know you're like, what? It's not.
Yeah.
It's not like there's an abundance of our people out on the ski slopes.
Yeah.
So most of the time, I was the only black person I would see out there. But there was
Yeah.
one day I saw somebody else and another guy who was black, and we both looked at each other and
Like,
just
what are
made
you
that
doing here?
nod. Yeah. So
Yeah.
just being active, being active.
Oh, that's really good. I wish I could be active, but no, not this time. I use it as an excuse not to do anything. Oh, there's pandemic, we can't go to the gym,
Yeah.
so I just gym with my face by eating a lot more.
Okay.
That's really fantastic. So, today we're going to be talking about, be the change. And this is like a really big deal, especially among people of color, among Black people.
Mhm.
We all tend to have complaints about everything, but how can we be a part of that change that we really want to see in our communities? So, so many people, so many times things happen that makes people to think, what can they do or contribute? But there's usually this voice saying it's no use, it's
Mhm.
already out of your control. So how do we change this mindset as people of color, as Black people, and as people generally?
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, it's important to recognize the validity in some of those thoughts and feelings, right?
Yeah,
Like Black people have a right to complain about what we complain about.
yeah,
Sometimes we complain about little petty things, whatever. But I think when we're talking about the reasons why folks may not believe they can aspire to certain things, or something seems like it might be not worth the effort based on their experiences beforehand, those complaints and concerns are valid. They're rooted in something that is very intentional, in that there's systems at work that are making it more difficult for us to accomplish the things we want to accomplish and to see ourselves in the places that we want to be seen. And I think one of the first things that is really important to recognize is where those thoughts and feelings come from. It's important to also recognize that there are people wherever you look, there, whatever it is you're aspiring to, there are people out there who believe in you who don't even know you. There are people out there who believe in you and want you to succeed, who you've never met. And the only way you're going to connect with those people, and maybe you've got them in your circles already, that's great. But when you start putting out in the world, and when you start putting into your thought process that you want to action these things and take those steps and put that out there, you're going to draw people to you who will support you in achieving that. So, this myth that people accomplish things on their own, or, the person who's a singular success, we need to get rid of that. We need to recognize that nobody gets to where they are by themselves. There are people along the way who are helping them, who are supporting them, and we need to recognize that it's building those relationships that can really make all the difference. And and that you're worth it. You deserve to achieve those things. You deserve to see the changes that you want to see. Most often, you're not the only person who thinks and feels that way. So when you put it out there, like I said, you're bound to connect to people, and collectively that contributes to getting where you want to go.
yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for saying that, because a lot of times when I chat with people and they say that people from other races, they don't understand. They're like, you guys are always complaining, you're too sensitive and all of that, but they don't understand where people are coming from. Because at the end of the day, especially if you work in a place, for example, and maybe you're one or two Black people there among a host of other people,
Mhm, mhm.
you feel like you don't have that voice. You feel like if I say anything, I'm just like less than 1% of the entire population. So what can I do? So,
Mhm.
and at the same time, as you said, we have to think about how can we also, help be a part of that. Because I would use you, for example, like you made history. It wouldn't have been like you just sitting and saying, well, maybe I can do anything. You also took that bold step, and thank God it worked out great. So
Mhm.
that's why I thought of you, like we need to bring you here so that we can see that we should know our self-value, know our self-worth, and know that we have more than we represent, more than people can see, and
Yeah.
we need to talk to our community and support one another. A lot of times I see people want to do stuff, and a lot of times people also bring them down from the same community, like don't
Yep.
waste your time. They talk them down, and
Mhm.
we're going to get to that later. But it's also people feeling like they are not getting enough support from their community, and they don't want to be the one to be there. So thank you for bringing that to the fore. It's really important that we know that. So looking at your bio, it is very rich with different but equally good career paths and causes. What
Yep.
inspired your different choices? Because I see you're a nurse, you played basketball, now you're into politics. Like it's a whole lot of things. What made you make those choices?
I mean, it's a good question. We're not static people, right? We're not, we exist as dynamic and very internally, intrinsically diverse human beings. And the beauty of that is that there are many different things in my own life that sparked me along the way. And the inevitably, whether I knew it or not, they were allowing for me to develop capacity in ways that I didn't even really think about being applied to other steps that I would take in my life. So being an athlete, like a lifelong athlete, playing sports because I just loved to move. I loved to be active. I had a ton of energy as a kid. It was a problem, for some teachers, how much energy I had, and my mom was really supportive of just, my kid needs to move all the time so that they can get this energy out and focus on other things. And so, morning comes, she opens the door, I'm out, I'm running around doing whatever. I come back home to get like, watered and fed for a few minutes. And then she opens the door and says, get out. And then I go out and I'm running around, and then sports became that outlet for me. And because NIJA, academics had to be a priority still.
Exactly.
And the discipline and the skills I learned in athletics, I was able to apply to different areas like sports, or sorry, like academics, like business, and post-secondary, got my education, went into nursing because that was what I studied. And realizing working in healthcare as a Black person, as a queer person, that the system allows for you to do one of two things, right? You can do your career as a nurse and you can do a great job, provide great care. You can also perpetuate some things in the healthcare system that are actually harmful. Systemic discrimination, perpetuating harmful gender roles and identity, being transphobic, all of these things that are embedded in that system. You can knowingly or unknowingly perpetuate them, or you can do the work in your own capacity to try and make good change in healthcare. And that was, for me, really, really important as a healthcare provider. And inevitably committing to doing that work in my role as a nurse was also happening at the same time that I recognized the issues in the community in terms of how Black people in the LGBTQ community were being treated and the racism in that community. And so you have this sort of emergence for myself anyway, and that's a longer story as to where it really came from, but an emergence of kind of activism within these areas of my life that were really important. And in doing all of that work, I didn't realize it, but there were relationships that I was making, skills that I was developing that ended up being a really good fit in politics. So I just think that ultimately we've all got skills, talents, abilities that once we commit to putting those things into intentional practice, setting some goals, we can actually expand our opportunities just by doing those things and coming from a place that is like real and authentic and honest about who you are.
Yeah. So that's really important. Being intentional. That's really, really important, because if you are not intentional about it, it's easy to just say, you know what? I ain't doing this. I don't have time for this. Let somebody else fight for me. I know that when I started my channel, before I started interviewing people, I know people, I started with anti-racism because my platform is about anti-racism, immigrants, and things like that. And I know a lot of people didn't support it. And somehow they thought they were doing something good, but it's because they're scared of my career and they're scared that people might like bully me online and things like that. So for them, it's coming from a good place, but at the same time, they were killing my morale. So I had to be intentional. Like, I'm going to shut that out, because if nobody says something, then this will continue to happen. And no matter how small my platform is, I want to use it to preach the word and let other people coming behind me see that you can do this. And that's why I bring like people from the Black community, from people of color, to talk to us that have actually shattered the glass ceiling in those aspects. So that's really good to be intentional. I really love that word, that statement. So the sayings go, be the change you want to see, or if you don't do it, it will not be done. Can you speak to the truthfulness of this statement or otherwise?
Absolutely. That statement is 100% true. Like that really, in a way that I actually get excited about. It's the truth. Because what you just talked about in terms of people discouraging you from using your platform and your voice to talk about something that's really important is what I experienced when I started doing community work in terms of advocating for Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, having a level of self-determined and directed visibility and safer spaces. People did not like that. People were highly upset, angry that those were the conversations that I was saying we need to have. And that came from, part of it came from a selfish place, if I'm going to be totally real with you. You know, it came from a place of me. There was one night in particular, I was driving home from work and, you know, working late, working as a nurse. My shift probably ended at like 11 p.m. and I wasn't tired. It was a busy shift. I was, you know, I was wide awake and it was like a Saturday night. Didn't work the next day. So I'm like, let me go out and get lit, you know, like, let me go out and find something fun to do. And I realized as I'm driving home and I'm trying to think about where I can go to connect with people and be safe and have fun and, you know, unwind for an hour or two after work, I realized in that moment, there wasn't a single place that I could identify that I would feel comfortable or safe as a Black person and as a queer person. I was like, I can go, there's Black clubs I can go to. I'm not going to necessarily feel totally comfortable as a queer person there. I can go to queer spaces. I'm definitely not going to feel totally comfortable there as a Black person. And when I had those conversations with other Black people who are LGBTQ, lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgender, whatever it is, they were thinking and feeling the same things. We started having more of those conversations. And at first it was, somebody eventually is going to create some space for us to go to and feel comfortable. Somebody's going to do it because we're talking about it, right? So other people must feel this way too. And then eventually I was like, why am I waiting for somebody else? Why are we waiting for someone else to do this when we can just do it ourselves? And so we began to create those spaces. And like I said, people weren't happy about it at first, but very quickly it became something bigger than what I had thought it would become because the need was there. So it came from this place of, you know, frustration and disappointment and feeling like there was no space for myself. And then with a few folks, we developed something because there was a greater need. So being the change is, it's okay to recognize that there's a problem and that you can be the mechanism to help solve that problem, fix that problem, address that issue. And, you know, maybe it's not going to go the way that you totally want it to go or happen as quickly as you'd like it to happen. But if we're all doing something within our capacity, if we're all, right, chipping away at this thing, that's a lot more effective than, you know, just one person on one part of that spectrum doing the work. We've all got something that we can do, and it all collectively makes a difference.
Yeah, that makes sense, because just now thinking about what you said about, oh, you know, we're having this conversation and somebody somewhere is also thinking the same thing and they're going to do something. I'm totally guilty of that. So many things that I see and I'll be like, well, if I'm thinking about it, then so many people must be thinking the same thing. And then the first year goes, second, third, fourth, and nothing is still done. So it's really important to be, which takes us back to what you said earlier, being intentional about, you know, creating that change, being a force for change. And when you start something, it ends up becoming, a lot of people too have been waiting for somebody to start, and then they start to join in, and join them, it becomes bigger than you thought, and it becomes a success. So that's really important. We just need somebody. But when everybody keeps saying, we need somebody, why can't you be that somebody that starts it? So that's really, you know, thought-provoking. That's really important. So let's talk politics. Did you have doubts about becoming successful as a Black person? And how did you sum out those fears?
Mm. It's interesting because I absolutely love being Black. Love it. Love being Nigerian. Love it. I love Black people. I love Nigerians. I love us. I love us. And so there was no doubt in me whatsoever about whether or not I could do the job. You know, I never had any doubts about whether or not I could be a good public servant in that way, because I believe in community, because I have values that I think our elected officials should have. And I am certainly by no means a perfect person. I make mistakes. I'm learning, and I have to be accountable to that and do better. But I never thought that I couldn't do the job. Let's be honest. When we look at elected officials, even just here in Canada, you can't really tell me that you look at different parliaments and you don't see mediocre white men in those roles who can't speak to an issue as if they've done any research, who clearly are not focused on the needs of their communities that they're representing. You know, it's amazing to me how sometimes Black people, racialized people, women, trans, non-binary folks, how we feel like, and we do have these extensive resumes, right? Like we have all of the volunteer experience. We've worked all of the jobs. We've done all of the research. We show up looking put together in every way, every time. And yet, here's this guy who went into politics because somebody was like, you'd be a really good politician. You should probably be a minister. And he's like, you know what, Stan? I should be a minister. And then he just does it. No second thought. Right? So it's interesting because no, I never had any doubts about whether or not I could do the job. But like you've touched on, there's a reality about what it means to do this work or take that step in the bodies that we're in. And so I did have to process and recognize that people are going to see a Black person running when there's not very many Black people who run for provincial politics. Nobody had been elected to that point at provincial level. I have an African name that's going to be on the ballot, right? Uzoma Asagwara. Like it's not Jill Stewart on the ballot box. And people who say, well, that wouldn't make a difference. People who have said that to me, like, why would any of that matter? I'm like, well, when I know, because I've been told by past employers that they put my resume at the bottom of a pile of resumes because they didn't want to have to try and pronounce my name, I know that stuff matters, right? We know that stuff matters. I had to process all of that. I had to process the fact that I'm queer. People know that. I do this work in community. And I know that not everybody is going to respond well to that, right? So, and those are real things that I had to deal with, knocking on doors, campaigning. There were some situations that were unpleasant because people make their prejudices known when they come into contact with you. But quite frankly, all of those things, all of the aspects of my identities contribute in a good way to me being able to do this job. And that's what I want for folks to understand is all of the things that people keep trying to tell us should make our lives more difficult or put us at a disadvantage because of the systemic issues and whatever else. These are actually beautiful attributes that we have that lend very well to doing this kind of work, really and truly. Perspectives and experiences that haven't been in these spaces ever in a lot of cases, and change the game when we're there. And so, I encourage people to focus on those details, right? Like focus on that aspect of things and how transformative your presence and your contributions will be when you take those steps.
Yeah, that's really important. And as you said, a lot of times people don't have the same experience and they want to make laws that affect people in the Black community. When you're not Black, you've never experienced what they've been through. But if you step up and you actually make up your mind that I'm going to do this, you'll be surprised how much support you will get and how much difference you will make if you finally are able to get into that office. And one thing I like to tell people every time is, let's say you decide to go into politics and you don't get elected, don't see it as a failure, because at the end of the day, you put your name out there, people already know you. You could keep trying. I've heard people that have tried more than once, twice, three times, four times, even people that are white, and it took them up to 7 times before getting it. So at the end of the day, don't curl back up into your shell. Use that as an opportunity to continue to develop yourself and continue to put your name out there. And the time will come where you will be elected because
Yes.
people have seen your value. So that's really important that we do. I know we're all guilty of talking, but then when it comes to action, it might be a little bit difficult because they say it's easier said than done. But if you start to take those little steps from now on, there'll come a day when you will be able to achieve your aim at the end of it all. So yeah, so you made history as the first Black person to pass a law in the history of Manitoba. What was the journey like, and what made you choose that particular bill?
It's interesting. That's a great question. I mean, the idea for the bill was brought forward by community members. And so we got to work, drafted the bill, got it ready. And the nature of politics sometimes is that things can happen very quickly and not when you think they're going to happen. So I actually had no idea that the bill, that wasn't part of the plan, to be honest. Like we had anticipated being able to push for this to pass many months down the road, and then there was an opportunity through negotiations between from our party and the government side to pass a law, and they were agreeable to. Everybody was agreeable to passing that one. So it happened quickly, like I said. It took 24 hours is really all the time that we had to try and reach out to different community groups and let them know. And we weren't able to do some of the consultations in the ways that we wanted, but that is sometimes the way that things go in the legislature. Things can happen on a dime, and you've got to be able to adapt. So yeah, that bill passed, and like I said, that's a reflection of community members who wanted this bill brought forward. And again, that is the importance of having people elected who reflect the communities that exist. These folks brought this bill forward, this bill idea forward, because they know me and they feel connected to me, and they're Black Somali folks living in Manitoba. And they're like, this is the person we can reach out to who we believe will support us in this. And that's my job, right? That's why we're elected. So the hope is the more and more of us who are elected and more people who reflect rather the communities that exist, the more you'll have citizens wanting to access the legislature as they should, because it's their building, right? We work for them, not the other way around. So
That's really good. And somebody here said, "Congratulations, so admirable, Latoya Belfon." She was one of my speakers at some point. So yeah, I've been going through your page as well, and I see that you do a whole lot of things for the Black community, especially Black businesses in Manitoba. Like, how has that been since you started this position? I've seen a couple of people, and what have been the feedbacks from those people?
Definitely try to use my platform to highlight Black businesses, just even going and supporting Black businesses. I love that. I love that for whatever the reasons are, if you're elected, people will pay attention sometimes to what you say. And so it's like, I've got to be able to use any platform I have, any platform, doesn't matter how small it is, to support Black business. And it's great because we see that entrepreneurship growing in Manitoba. I'd love to see that really continue to grow and expand. And there's also a way, that I'll say the Black community here can do a better job supporting one another and supporting Black business. And so, you always want to role model and model that sort of support and championing of businesses. Business is hard. Being an entrepreneur is tough. So I always want for as many folks as possible to know they're not alone and that we're going to show up for them.
Yeah, that's really important. And I try to do as much as I can as well on my platform. I know a lot of people will say, oh, you have less than 500 people. But at the end of the day, if one person see my post and purchases something, I feel that's a big win. So absolutely. A lot of times without asking people, because I don't want them to think that I have like a hidden agenda or I want something back. So I just go on people's pages and I see what they do and I just post it on my channel. Sometimes I embed it in between my video because I post videos every Friday. And some people will come back and say, oh, thank you. I saw that. I really appreciate it. I didn't see that coming. Some people will totally ignore because they look at it like, you don't have 10,000 subscribers, so they don't care. But I still try. I don't let that discourage me. I still try to, promote people. And I feel like at some point when this channel becomes a bigger platform, people will go back and look at those videos and then will purchase. So even if it's not big now, or if it's not bringing results now, you don't know what it would be down the line. So I always encourage people, no matter how small your platform is, try as much as possible, to promote Black businesses around us. Because if we don't do it, just like we said before, nobody else will do it.
True.
So it's really, really, really important. So now talking about backlashes, because as you said, you're Black, you're a queer person, and you're non-conforming, right? So there will be, when you came out to say, well, I want to run for this position, I believe that there will be a lot of backlashes. So were there backlashes, and then what were the strategies you used to deal with them?
Sure. I mean, most people are great. Most people are wonderful. There are some folks maybe don't understand or don't know what gender nonconforming means. There are people that, didn't know that I use neutral pronouns because that's a process, right? Like that's not something that I even had disclosed openly to everybody. And then the election was coming around and I had to, myself, I was like, I'm not going to be able to deal with seeing everybody in the media refer to me as she, her. And I had to make the decision, kind of force my hand to be very clear about that. But so there are people who picked up on that and were like, I didn't know that. We've never talked about that. You didn't tell me that. Having those conversations and kind of bringing people up to speed. So, like I said, most people have been great. There are always going to be unhappy, miserable people, bigots, who feel like it's their right to make you know that they're bigots or make you know that your presence offends them. And that is what it is. I'm just like, I can't change you. I don't want to do that work. It's not my responsibility. I can't fix your unhappiness and I can't fix your bigotry. There are some folks who have expressed some negative things, and then you have a conversation with them after because they are open to it and they shift their thinking, right? And that's folks who really never even, to their knowledge, had any sort of relationship or friendship with somebody who is, gay or lesbian or trans or non-binary, Black. You'd be, 2021, there's people who don't have any Black people in their friend circles, in their families, which is shocking, but it's true. So, for the few people who go out of their way to display their ugliness, it doesn't put a dent in the amount of people who show kindness and who are respectful and affirming and wonderful. There are situations, unfortunately, being a politician means that you are more of a public, visible, accessible person in ways. And there have been some unfortunate aspects to that since I've been elected. I did anticipate some of that before going into politics. Something my mom was really worried about. My mom, in the beginning, didn't want me to run. She was really worried about that part of the job. Now she's good. And, but like I said, I was kind of mentally prepared for those situations. And I'm a pretty pragmatic person. I just do what I need to do, right? Oh, this person sends me hate mail. Okay, I'm going to report it to whoever I need to report it to. It goes in the file. If I've got to take extra steps to be mindful of, my comings and goings in a certain place, then I do that. You just kind of adapt and adjust. But I really do try to focus on and lean into the good because, like I said, that is overwhelmingly more of the response. And I think that that's really beautiful. And I think that sometimes unfortunately the loudest voices can be the ones
Exactly.
that are right,
Yeah.
those mean ones, but it doesn't mean that they're in quantity that there are more of them than the good voices.
Yeah. So that's really important because a lot of times, as you said, those there's so much support around you, but those
Mhm.
little ones, those one or two people, they're always very loud, and
Mhm.
sometimes it makes you to start second guessing yourself, or it makes you to start thinking about, you try not to, but then because they're so loud, it affects you. And this is
Mhm.
something that I had to prepare for when I started this channel at first,
Yeah.
because my sister was telling me, are you sure, that a lot of people go to really crazy extent, right? Are
Mhm.
you sure? I said, I'm sure. I grew my tough skin. But
Yeah.
usually when people leave like silly comments, I
Mhm.
delete it because I don't
Good.
want to give people the opportunity, because I know that one is there. If I leave it there, then people start commenting on that, and then it becomes a floodgate of
Yeah.
negative stuff. So I always delete it. But there was one that I didn't delete, but I had to respond. And I'm guessing that this person is white, because the
Mhm.
person said something like, grow your hair, go to the back of the bus. Pride is of the devil, and something like that. I was like,
Mhm.
what the heck is that? Like,
Mhm.
I didn't let it affect me, but I felt the
Mhm.
need to address that person. So I
Okay.
did, and I addressed it with like a long thing. And then he didn't respond back, and nobody else said anything. I was like, yeah, I think
Yeah.
I
Shut
that's
that down.
not as much, because
Yeah.
usually I would delete it and then they'll come back later. But I addressed it because I didn't want that. I felt like I'll be doing myself injustice if I didn't
Sure.
address that comment. So I did. And he didn't respond. Nobody also responded under that. I felt good about that. So
Good.
that's really important, because nowadays cyberbullying is becoming
Oh,
really, really big, and it's affecting people, making people more anxious, depression and all of that. And COVID-19 also is not making things better, because everybody now is on social media. Everybody's on their phones all the time, listening to the news, and it's all bad news around them. So sometimes those loud voices could really, really mess up with you. So
sure.
at some point, I would say, if need be that you respond, you should respond. Otherwise, just ignore them and
Yeah.
keep going. So
I
that's
agree.
really important. All right. So my next question. So, what type of support and resources were available to you when you were running, and or what are those that are available now for people who see a need for change and are willing to step up to the plate to institute such changes?
That's great. So it's interesting. Politics is a funny world. It very much there's a lot of gatekeeping in politics. There's a lot of who you know, how you know people. Um, there's a lot of unspoken, unwritten. Uh, I don't want to say rules, but maybe rules that some folks think you should adhere to. I was very very fortunate that I had friendships with a couple of folks who were already elected, Indigenous women who were really supportive and who they're just supportive people in general, but they also have values that are centered around community and affirming and lifting people up. And so those were great role models for me in terms of how you can do politics in a good way. And they're incredibly supportive, right down to taking me to events so that I can see what it's like to be in certain events and see how politicians, what that looks like for them, explaining the process of how you get nominated by a party, how you can run in an election, all of that, sort of demystifying everything, right? So that it's not so murky and doesn't seem like it's so difficult to understand or navigate. And that was a tremendous help, tremendous help. And then so I guess what I would say to folks is, you know, building those relationships, reach out to people that you respect, reach out to those folks who you're like, I want to do the job the way they do the job. I admire the way they do these things. I want to learn from them. Reach out to them. You know, we want to hear from you because I want to support folks in pursuing what it is they want to pursue. And, you know, the other part of it is like, just do you. You know, nobody, for all the there is gatekeeping in politics. Like I said, there are ways in which that people have for a long time functioned politically, and you don't have to subscribe to that. You can do things in your own way. We're seeing that now all the time with politicians. We're seeing that with these politicians in the States. We're seeing that with politicians here in Canada who aren't your typical cookie cutter politicians. They do it their own way. They're authentic about who they are and what they bring to the table. And people respond to that. People appreciate that. And so I would encourage folks to do just that. Be yourself. Connect with people who you respect. Ask for their guidance. And be ready to work hard. Be ready to work hard. It is a grind. And like I said, you don't know in your life the things that you're doing and how they contribute to you taking other steps in life. But, you know, when I think about the fact that I was on a national team, I, you know, played elite level basketball, I'm very used to training 8 hours a day. You know, I was a nurse. I'm used to being on my feet for 16 hours a day. So for me, going out and door knocking every single day for 10 hours a day was like nothing. It was like nothing. You know, going out after my shift at work and connecting with community and doing that work, no problem. I knew if nothing else, I knew nobody was going to outwork me. Nobody. I knew it. I was like, there's no way any other candidate is going to work harder than me. I can control that. So, you know, that's the other thing that I always try to convey to people. Just work as hard as you possibly can. And if you at the end of the day can say, I know that nobody outworked me, I did my best, regardless of the outcome, you can rest easy in that. And I think that's an important thing that you spoke to it earlier, right? About maybe it's not going to be the first time you run that you win, or you're going to have setbacks or whatever. But if you do it in a way that you can really rest and feel good about after, that matters.
That's really important. So I was on social media yesterday and I saw somebody's post, which I kind of liked, and what I would paraphrase, it says something like, being the first Black person at your workplace, it's a success, but remaining the only Black person there is a sin. And I just bawled. I was like, so I had to respond. I was like, yeah, preach it, sister. Because I was like, yeah, and that's true. So are you willing to mentor other people to get into politics, and so that it's not just you in the house?
I don't want it to be just me. I've got a colleague, Jamie Moses. There's 3 of us elected in 2019. 2 of us in the NDP, 1 in the Conservative caucus. I tell people this all the time. We weren't all 3 of us elected in 2019 because we're the best and the brightest possible Black politicians there are. Like, we're bright, we're capable, all of those. I'm not discrediting myself by any means, but it is ludicrous to think that there aren't other Black people who can do this job and do it well, and who shouldn't also be there. There are so many people who should be there. I want them there. Absolutely, I'm willing to mentor, help, support. I'll go knock doors. I'll sell memberships. You know, if somebody wants that, and I mean, I'm not going to just say blanket statement anybody, because if you are the kind of person who I'm like, I think you're not a very good person. You know what I mean? Like, we're not a monolith. So I'm not going to be knocking doors for a Black candidate who wants to run for the Conservative Party here in Manitoba, because I don't think that they should be governing Manitoba. I'm not going to knock doors for someone who, maybe their values are like way, 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 way right, whereas mine are not way, 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 way right. But I think that there's plenty of people who should be engaged in politics who are not, because maybe they feel like they can't connect with folks to learn how to, or that they won't be supported. And I know that the same with my colleague Jamie Moses. We're very happy to connect with folks and provide the support if this is the path they want to take, and certainly willing to put in the work right alongside people who want to run. As long as they're folks who like I said, I'm not going to go door knocking for a PC candidate ever, but I'm happy to do that work and support somebody, if they're pursuing something that is in line with my values, for sure, and I support their values.
All right, that's really good. So now, talking about work, if where you work before you even started this, and even after you became a politician, I know that when people say strong Black people, they tend to be threatened by them in some type of way. Do you ever experience that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm sure many Black people can relate to that. I've been in situations where I'm expressing my dislike for something, or I don't agree with something, or I think there's an issue with something, and people will I could be speaking in this tone right now, and they're like, well, why are you so heated about it? And I'm just talking. It's just, but it's what's really going on sometimes for some folks is that if you're not falling in line, that if you're expressing your displeasure, and most often it's really about if you're identifying something that is making other people uncomfortable. So it's like, this situation is racist, or that was sexist, or whatever it is. People just really get defensive. I've experienced that countless times. And at the end of the day, I've always felt, especially in the last decade, for sure, more than that, much longer than that, actually, realizing how old I am now. But
We'll calculate.
yeah, wait a minute, that was 15 years ago. Wow. I just feel a tremendous responsibility to speak up. And I have no problem having difficult or uncomfortable conversations. And I think that if I have the capacity for that, then it's a responsibility to be able to have those tough conversations, and even tell people point blank when they're constructing me in a way that is incongruent with how I'm actually communicating, or who I am, or how I am, and then explaining to them how, in fact, the way they're constructing me is racist, or is misogynistic, or whatever, is transphobic, whatever it is. And I'm glad to see more and more people, Black people, talking about those experiences, and expecting those folks who are subjecting them to those experiences to actually be accountable.
Exactly. Because I've also experienced that a lot, and I would say, not tooting my own on, but I feel like I'm the nicest person you can meet. Like, I'm very down to earth. I would talk to you, I would laugh, and people still feel threatened, especially, first of all, because they know I'm a lawyer. Second of all, because they know I have a channel where I talk about anti-racism. But just because of that, it doesn't define me. It doesn't define the way I'm talking to you. If I'm talking to you, don't have it in your mind that, oh, maybe she's trying to watch out that I'm racist or something like that. Because I get that a lot. I'm like, how am I threatening? And people will be like, you can understand because, you have this platform and that. So if you feel threatened because you think, oh, because she's a lawyer, or because she has a platform that talks, then you must actually be racist.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what am I saying? Because I'm trying to think, what did I say wrong?
Yeah.
I didn't see anything. You're just the one thinking that I might be trying to paint you in that light. And if you're thinking that way, then you have a problem. You have to check
Exactly.
yourself, because you might actually be racist. Because
Mm.
I still don't get it. That's why I was asking you, especially now being in politics, because I'm not in politics, I'm not in anything, but
Mm.
people still feel threatened by me. So
Mhm.
that's really ridiculous. I don't know how to help people out with that. But if you're uncomfortable with me, well, that's your headache. I can't help you.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's your headache. So yeah, it's crazy. A lot of times we don't. I think racism has different fields. People think because they're not
Sure.
swearing at you, then that means they're not racist, or because they're married to a black person, or because
Yeah.
they have black friends, or they adopted black children. Oh, I'm not
Yeah.
racist. No, you could be in subtle ways. Sometimes even it's microaggression. So
Hmm.
I don't know how to address that, and it's a big deal. But yeah, it drives me crazy every time people are just kind of suggesting, what you said is racist. The other day, I was promoting on my LinkedIn. I promoted black-owned businesses, and I
Hmm.
said support black-owned business. And somebody had the guts to comment there that they feel that I am being racist by saying black-owned business.
Mm.
And I was like, what?
It's
I was like,
comical.
no, the fact that I used that black, I said, no, it's not racist, because I am black. I
Yeah.
identify as black. I love being black, and I'm supporting black-owned businesses because other people wouldn't support us. So if we
Exactly.
support ourselves, and then it was like, no, that's not what I mean. I'm not. I said the fact that you feel uncomfortable with the fact that I said black-owned, and you had to come and comment on my LinkedIn,
Mm.
then you have some problems. Oh, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. That's not what they're trying to say, and blah blah blah. It was just, I had to munch that and put it on my social media, but then I
Yeah.
had to scratch the person's name out, just because I don't want it to be like, oh, you're the one that put them out there for people to bully them or something. But I
Yeah.
just put that conversation, that imagine that in 2021 somebody still
Yeah.
feel uncomfortable for a black person to call themselves black and support black owned business. So people are crazy out there. I don't know what to do with them.
It's wild when people make those comments, and I've seen those comments as well. Like, why can't you just say businesses? Why can't
Exactly.
you? I had the same thing when I was elected. I actually had a former colleague, coworker, was like, when I went to my old workplace to get my belongings, was like, oh, but why do they always have to say you're queer, or that you're the first black person? It would be nice to. And I was like, because it's true, and because black people and queer people are still persecuted, still don't have full equity, still face barriers to accessing any of these opportunities, right? Black owned businesses, people who run black businesses or who want to, still have a harder time accessing funds, getting loans, getting space, maintaining sustainable business, having their concepts be respected. A black person can have a beautiful, amazing concept, and I've seen it happen right here in Manitoba, right here in Winnipeg. A great platform. A white person will take their ideas, take that platform basically, and rebrand it under their name, and they get 10 times the amount of support in business, right? That's why
Exactly.
black-owned businesses go support them. So, people who complain about it, like you said, need to check where that discomfort is coming from and that frustration is coming from, and they need to go out and support black-owned businesses so that
Exactly.
we can just be saying
It would
businesses.
just be businesses. Because when I
Exactly.
talk to people and I say anything like black, they don't like it. They're not comfortable. And they say something like, "Oh, it's human race at the end of the day." Yeah, we know that's the dream, but it's not the
Yeah,
reality, right? That's where we want to get to, where we don't have to say black, white, brown,
yeah.
yellow, whatever. We want to be humans. But right now, that's not the reality. So let's just call a spade a spade. But
Mhm.
a lot of times I don't want to engage in those conversations. Sometimes I
Sure.
would shut it down I just state the fact, shut it down, because then
Mhm.
it becomes a long, long story, and I ain't got time for that. Go online and
Yeah.
go Google. So yeah, so it's crazy. So looking back at what you've learned from your journey and experiences, what will your advice be as regards becoming a force for change in our communities?
Mhm. Again, for me, it really comes down to being yourself, like really learning who you are. The more you learn who you actually are and you embrace that and you learn to love that about yourself, and you can walk in this world authentically, it allows for you to do everything from a place that is genuine, that is truthful, and that is sustainable. The biggest transformation in my life, the point at which I was able to really start seeing my relationships change for the better, my goals and outcomes change for the better, was when I committed to learning to love myself for exactly who I am and to lead from that place. It it allowed me so much more mental and emotional, spiritual room to do things in a sustainable way. When I didn't have to use that energy to try and constantly figure out what box I'm supposed to live in, what box I'm supposed to fit in, how I'm supposed to best navigate this workplace and not step on toes and present myself to make people to make other people feel more comfortable. When I stopped having to put energy into that, I had so much more resource for the other things. And that's when things in my life really changed. So I always encourage people to come from that space, because that is the space that is sustainable. That is the space that people connect with, right? That is the space that is going to serve you long term and is going to alleviate some of the burden that exists when you're constantly having to address some of the things internally or otherwise that don't even belong to you, right? And that's why when I think about some of the negative things that I get from people in situations, that's none of my business. Like, how this person perceives me and what they think about me, this person who doesn't pay my bills, this person who doesn't call to check on me, this person who my mom doesn't know, this person who who I'm not connected to really in any way, this person who doesn't care about me and my humanity, what they think and feel about me is none of my business. And people sometimes will make a real effort to try and make it your business. And I'm not saying that there are definitely situations sometimes that we have to navigate that are unfair, that do require energy and that we have to pay attention to it and address, and that sucks. But that even becomes more manageable when all of the other areas are getting the good energy and the resource that they deserve because you are settled within yourself. And that's something for me that is truly invaluable in terms of the work that I have been doing personally, that is ongoing work. And I hope that for other people, especially, our people, Black people, I hope for that for Black people, because it serves us as a whole community when everybody in our community is allowed to just be their whole self and be loved that way.
Yeah. All right. So before I ask my final question, something came to my mind that I felt like maybe we just need to address. And it's most of the time, for example, in the workplace, a lot of Black people and people of color, they go through a lot of discrimination and things like that. But they're so scared to talk and to speak up because they feel like they're going to be dismissed, they're going to be fired. And that's their source of livelihood. And it took them so much to be able to get that one, and they're already scared of losing it. So a lot of times they can't say anything, or they not like they can't, but they wouldn't because they are scared of losing their source of livelihood. So how do you advise people in such situations? What can they do?
I really appreciate this question because it's true, because that's a reality for people. And can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, I can hear you. I think the internet
Okay,
is
good.
just a little messy, but I can hear you.
Okay. That's a very real reality for people. And so one of the things that I tell folks, especially folks who are more vulnerable in the workplace and more vulnerable just in the world, right? Women, trans folks, LGBTQ folks, two-spirit people. The number one thing is it's got to be your safety, right? And safety means different things to different people. Safety in terms of your physical safety, your mental health and wellness, your job security, right? Your safety in terms of your financial situation. I respect and appreciate anyone who has to make a decision to protect their income and therefore make decisions that allow for that to be protected. I also think that it shouldn't be the responsibility of people who are targeted and marginalized in those spaces to do the work of making those spaces safer for them. So I think if you can find trusted people who can speak up when those issues arise, who can challenge and push back against those things, then fantastic, because it shouldn't be your responsibility all the time. It shouldn't be you taking the risks when you're the one who's most vulnerable in that place. And I always, again, if where it's possible, use those colonial tools to your advantage if you can. Learn your human resources policies. Learn all of the mechanisms that exist to protect you in those places. And as people learn and create more awareness around discrimination in the workplace and how it functions, people will be more understanding of the things that you are identifying as problematic. I've had people call me in my role now. I've had Black people and mostly women, not all women, but mostly. But I've had Black women, Black men, people of color reach out to me as a politician and say, this is what I'm dealing in the workplace. Can you help me? And we help them. We do. We figure out what they're comfortable with. We direct them to the resources, the appropriate places that can provide support that they didn't even know about. We help them, write everything out the way it needs to be written, documenting incidents if that's what's happening. We act as a support for them. We validate what they're saying, they're experiencing. And in one particular situation that comes to mind for me, it was even being able to have a conversation with that person's employer, because the person who was experiencing these issues in the workplace was struggling with how to articulate that to their boss. And it wasn't like they didn't think their boss would necessarily be receptive. They just didn't really know how to articulate these things that were going on. And so looped me into the conversation. I was just able to help kind of support that dialogue and help them articulate that in a way that they felt comfortable with. So however I can be supportive with people, I'm going to do that. And that's what people need to do. Find people who support you, who believe you, and who help you navigate those tough situations.
Okay, so they can reach out to their MLA in their different regions to help them.
They should be able to, absolutely. And if your MLA doesn't want to help you, if they say it's not in my purview, I just think that there are some things that we have to think, again, outside of the box. Some politicians may say, it's not really my job. Like, come on, let's evolve beyond what you think is just supposed to fit in your job. And let's make sure that if people trust us enough to reach out for help, that in whatever way we can help them.
All right. Thank you so much. So my final question, which I ask all my guests, is looking back at your trajectory, would there be anything that you would have wanted to change? Like if you had the time to go back in time, would there be anything you would like to change?
Yes, I would have invested in Bitcoin. I would have bought Bitcoin. I would have bought Bitcoin.
Me too. Yeah. I really, really appreciate you coming on here today. We learned a lot from you, and I believe I will also be going back to sit down and watch this from the beginning, to get one or two things that I can also apply to my life, to my situation. And yeah, I believe a lot of people will be able to do that as well. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much, Uzoma. And I don't know if anybody have any questions, but if you do, and you can't put it here, you can also probably go on our social media and leave a message. Hopefully you get a response. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I know that's like almost about 4 minutes past the time. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
So
it's an honor to be on your platform. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you so much. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you, Latoya, Sharon, Clove Root Plus, Chris A, Megasiroya, every one of you, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining the stream, and I'll see you again next Saturday. Bye.